The white satin wedding dress clung to Olivia Ashford's trembling frame as she stumbled down the dusty main street of Benton, Arkansas. Her vision blurred by tears that carved clean paths through the powder on her cheeks. It was August of 1876, and the merciless afternoon sun beat down on her bare shoulders, turning the elaborate gown into a suffocating prison of fabric and broken dreams. Behind her, the church doors stood open like a mouth frozen mid-scream, and she could still hear the gasps and whispers of the congregation who had watched Thomas Whitfield take one look at her walking down the aisle and bolt out the side door like a spooked horse. She had no destination in mind, just the desperate need to escape the pitying stares and scandalized murmurs. Her feet, clad in delicate white slippers wholly unsuitable for the unpaved roads, carried her past the general store, past the saloon with its tinny piano music spilling into the street, past the blacksmith's forge where the heat added to her misery. She did not know where she was going. She had no family left in Arkansas, her parents having passed 2 winters ago from influenza. Thomas had been her only option, or so she had believed. Now she had nothing. Olivia finally stopped at the edge of town where the road forked, one path leading toward Little Rock, the other disappearing into the pine forests that stretched for miles. Her legs gave out and she sank onto a wooden bench outside the telegraph office, her enormous skirts pooling around her like melted snow. She buried her face in her hands and let the sobs come, great heaving things that shook her entire body. "Miss," a deep voice cut through her crying. "You all right there?" Olivia looked up through her tears to see a man standing a respectful distance away, hat in hand. He was tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin and crow's feet at the corners of eyes that were the color of whiskey in lamplight. His dark hair was slightly too long, curling at his collar, and he wore the practical clothes of a working man. Worn denim pants, a faded blue shirt, scuffed boots with spurs that caught the light. A gun belt sat low on his hips, the holster tied down to his thigh in the manner of someone who knew how to use it. "Do I look all right?" The words came out sharper than she intended, but she was beyond caring about propriety. He had the grace to look chagrined. "No, miss, you do not. Looks like you have had about the worst day a person can have. Very observant." She turned away, hoping he would leave, but she heard his footsteps approach instead. He sat down on the far end of the bench, maintaining a careful distance. "Saw what happened at the church," he said quietly. "Was passing through town and heard the commotion. That man is a fool. That man was my betrothed." Her voice cracked on the last word, like I said. "A fool." Despite everything, Olivia felt the tiniest spark of something that was not quite humor but was not entirely misery either. She wiped at her face with the back of her hand, knowing she must look a fright. "Did you need something, Mr. Garrett, Everett Garrett?" He turned his hat in his hands, studying it as though it held answers to unasked questions. "And no, miss, I do not need anything. Just seemed wrong to leave a lady in distress without at least offering some assistance. I appreciate the sentiment, but unless you can turn back time or conjure up a new life out of thin air, I do not see how anyone can help me." The defeat in her own voice startled her. 3 hours ago she had been nervous but hopeful, preparing to start her life as a married woman. Now she was ruined. Everyone in Benton would know by sunset that she had been jilted at the altar. No decent man would have her now. Everett was quiet for a long moment, then asked, "Got anywhere to go?" The simple question hit her like a physical blow. "No." "Well then." He stood up and settled his hat back on his head, then looked down at her with an expression she could not quite read. "Now you do." Olivia stared at him. "I beg your pardon." "I have a ranch about 2 days' ride north of here. up near the Ozark foothills. It is not much, but it is honest work and clean living. I could use someone to help with the house and the cooking. The hands I employ are good with cattle but useless in the kitchen, and I am not much better." He met her eyes directly. "I am offering you a position, Miss Ashford, Olivia Ashford." Her mind reeled. Accept a job from a stranger. Travel alone with a man she had just met. Everything she had been taught about respectability and proper behavior screamed that this was madness. But what other choice did she have? She had $17 to her name, no family, and now no prospects for marriage. She could try to find work in Benton, but the scandal would follow her everywhere. People would talk. They would assume things. "I know what you are thinking," Everett said. "It is not proper. But I give you my word as a Christian man that I will treat you with nothing but respect. You would have your own room in the house, and I will pay you fair wages. If it does not suit you after a week, I will bring you back to town myself or pay your passage to wherever you want to go." Olivia studied him, trying to see past the surface to the man beneath. His face was honest, weathered by sun and wind but not hardened by cruelty. His eyes held a quiet kindness that seemed genuine. More importantly, he had not looked at her with pity or schadenfreude, just straightforward concern. "Why would you do this for a complete stranger?" she asked. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Lost my own folks when I was 16. Cattle drive accident took my father, and my mother followed 6 months later. Could not live with the grief, I think. A stranger gave me work when I had nothing, taught me the ranching trade, gave me a chance to build something. Figure I can pass that kindness along." The sincerity in his voice decided her. What did she have to lose? Her reputation was already in tatters, and pride would not put food in her belly or a roof over her head. "All right," she said quietly. "I accept your offer, Mr. Garrett. Everett, please. If we are going to be working together, no need for formality." He looked at her dress, the layers of satin and lace that must have cost a small fortune. "You are going to want to change out of that before we head out. Do you have other clothes at the boarding house?" "My trunk." She had paid for a week in advance, planning to stay there until the wedding night when she would have moved into Thomas's house. That thought brought a fresh wave of humiliation. "We will go collect your things. My horse is at the livery. Can you ride?" "Yes. My father taught me when I was young." She had loved riding before her parents died, but there had been no opportunity for it in the past 2 years while she had been working as a seamstress and trying to make ends meet. They walked back through town together, and Olivia felt every eye on them. Whispers followed in their wake like dust devils. She kept her chin up and her eyes forward, refusing to give the gossips the satisfaction of seeing her shame. Everett walked slightly ahead, his presence somehow creating a buffer between her and the curious stares. At the boarding house, the landlady, Mrs. Henderson, was waiting with obvious excitement. "Oh, Miss Ashford, what a terrible thing! I heard about what happened. That Thomas Whitfield ought to be horsewhipped, running out like that, and you such a sweet girl. Do you need anything, dear?" "Some tea, perhaps. Just my trunk, thank you, Mrs. Henderson." Olivia kept her voice level. "Of course, of course." The older woman's eyes shifted to Everett with undisguised curiosity. "And who is this? Someone helping me with my things?" Olivia did not elaborate. Let them wonder. She went up to her small room and changed quickly out of the wedding dress, leaving it in a heap on the bed. She never wanted to see it again. Instead, she put on a simple brown traveling dress and her sturdy leather boots. She pinned her blonde hair back into a practical bun and collected the few possessions she owned. 2 other dresses, a nightgown, her mother's Bible, a daguerreotype of her parents, and the small box containing her sewing supplies. Everett carried her trunk downstairs without complaint, though she saw the slight strain in his arms. It was not heavy, just awkward. They left Mrs. Henderson stammering questions on the porch and headed to the livery stable. His horse was a tall bay gelding with intelligent eyes and a calm disposition. The stable boy had already saddled it, and Everett secured her trunk behind the saddle with practiced efficiency. His name is Boone. He is steady and will not spook easily. Have you ridden double before? No. The intimacy of it made her nervous, but she had agreed to this. It is not complicated. I will ride behind the saddle and you will sit in front. Just hold onto the horn and let Boone do the work. He swung up onto the horse's back behind the saddle, settling himself with the ease of someone who had spent half his life on horseback, then reached down to help her up. His hand was calloused and warm as it closed around hers. With surprising strength, he pulled her up, and she settled into the saddle, acutely aware of his presence behind her. He reached around her to take the reins, and she could feel the solid warmth of his chest against her back. Ready. His voice was close to her ear. As I will ever be. They rode out of Benton as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Olivia did not look back. The first hour passed in silence. Olivia was too exhausted from the emotional turmoil of the day to make conversation, and Everett seemed content to let the quiet stretch between them. The landscape gradually shifted from the flat farmland around Benton to rolling hills dotted with pine and oak. The air cooled as they climbed, bringing relief from the oppressive August heat. Finally, as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Everett spoke. We will make camp soon. There is a good spot about a mile ahead with a creek. We can reach the ranch by tomorrow evening if we make good time. All right. Olivia's voice was hoarse from disuse. You holding up all right? I know this is a lot. I am managing. It was not entirely true, but what else could she say? That her entire world had collapsed in the span of a few hours. That she was terrified and humiliated and angry all at once. He did not need to hear her complaints. For what it is worth, Thomas Whitfield did you a favor. She stiffened. How do you figure that? Any man who would run from his own wedding is not a man you want to spend your life with. Better to find out now than 5 years and 3 children down the road when he decides married life is not for him and disappears. There was a rough logic to that, though it did little to ease the sting. Did you know him? No, just saw him run past me like the devil himself was chasing him. Had this wild, panicked look on his face. Everett paused. Can I ask you something, I suppose? Did you love him? The question caught her off guard. She considered lying, then decided there was no point. No, I liked him well enough. He was kind to me when we courted, and he had a good job at the bank. It seemed like a sensible match. Sensible, Everett repeated, and she heard something in his tone that might have been disapproval or perhaps just sadness. That is a cold word for a marriage. Love is a luxury for people with choices, Mr. Garrett. I needed security. Everett, he reminded her gently. And you are probably right. I just think you deserve better than sensible. Olivia did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing. They made camp beside a clear creek that burbled over smooth stones. Everett built a small fire while Olivia unpacked the few supplies he had in his saddlebags, some jerky, hardtack, and coffee. It was not much, but she was too tired to be hungry anyway. I am sorry I do not have better provisions, he said as he handed her a piece of jerky. Was not planning on company when I rode into town this morning. What brought you to Benton? She tore off a small bite of the dried meat, chewing slowly. Needed to file some papers at the land office. My ranch borders some public land, and I wanted to make sure my water rights were properly recorded before some big outfit tries to claim them. He poured coffee into 2 tin cups and handed her one. Exciting stuff. She caught the dry humor in his voice and found herself almost smiling. Sounds riveting, Oh, it was. Nothing like spending 3 hours with a clerk who moves slower than winter molasses. He took a sip of his coffee and grimaced. Sorry, it is terrible. I never did learn to make it properly. Olivia tried hers and had to agree. It was bitter and weak at the same time, an impressive feat. I can make coffee, she offered. My mother taught me. Well, then, you have already earned your wages. They sat in companionable silence as the fire crackled and the sky deepened to indigo. Frogs sang from the creek, and somewhere in the distance an owl hooted. The sounds of civilization were gone, replaced by the ancient rhythms of the wilderness. Despite everything, Olivia felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. Out here, no one was watching her or whispering about her. Out here she could breathe. You can take the bedroll, Everett said, gesturing to the bundle he had spread out near the fire. I will keep watch. You do not need to do that, I trust you. The words surprised her even as she said them, but she realized they were true. Something about Everett Garrett made her feel safe in a way she had not felt in a long time. Appreciate that, but it is not just about trust. We are in the open country now, and there are things besides people to worry about. Bears mostly, though they usually leave folks alone if you do not bother them. Still, better to be cautious. Olivia settled onto the bedroll, which smelled faintly of horse and leather, and something clean she could not identify. She watched Everett through half-closed eyes as he sat with his back against a tree, rifle across his lap. The firelight played across his features, highlighting the strong line of his jaw and the sharp planes of his cheekbones. He was handsome, she realized, in a rough-hewn way that had nothing to do with the calculated charm Thomas had possessed. She fell asleep wondering what she had gotten herself into. Morning came with the smell of coffee, real coffee that did not taste like boiled dirt. Olivia opened her eyes to find Everett crouched by the fire, tending a small pot that steamed promisingly. Thought I would give it another try, he said when he noticed she was awake. Still not sure it is any good. She sat up, finger combing her hair, suddenly self-conscious about how she must look. What time is it? Little past dawn, wanted to get an early start. He poured her a cup and handed it over. Better. She took a careful sip and was pleasantly surprised. It was not perfect, but it was drinkable. Much better. You learn fast. Necessity is a fine teacher. They broke camp quickly, and Olivia found herself back on Boone with Everett's presence solid and reassuring behind her. The morning was cool, with mist rising from the low-lying areas and dewdrops glittering on spiderwebs stretched between branches. It was beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. As they rode, Everett began to talk, filling the silence with stories about his ranch and the surrounding country. He told her about the 100 head of cattle he was trying to build into a larger herd, about the 2 ranch hands who worked for him, brothers named Jack and Samuel Morrison, who were good men if a bit rough around the edges. He talked about the challenges of ranching in Arkansas, the constant battle against drought in summer and floods in spring, the threat of rustlers and wild animals. It sounds like hard work, Olivia said. It is. But it is mine, you know. Every fence post I put in the ground, every calf born healthy, every good year when the cattle bring a fair price at market. It all means something because I built it with my own hands. She heard the pride in his voice and understood it. After years of feeling powerless, of having her life dictated by circumstance and necessity, the idea of building something of her own held tremendous appeal. "What will you have me do?" she asked. "You mentioned cooking and housework, but what exactly does that entail?" "Whatever you are comfortable with, honestly. The house is in decent shape structurally, but it could use a woman's touch. The cooking would be the big thing. Jack and Samuel take turns at it now, and let me tell you, their idea of a meal is anything that does not actively try to escape the plate." If you can bake bread and cook meat without turning it into leather, you will be a miracle worker." He paused. "Can you bake bread?" "I can. And make stews, roast chicken, fry fish, and bake pies if you have the ingredients." "Pies," Everett said reverently. "I have not had a proper pie in 3 years. Miss Ashford, you are going to spoil us rotten." "Olivia," she said. "If I am to call you Everett, you should call me Olivia. Olivia." The way he said her name, with a slight drawl that made the syllables stretch out, sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "It is a pretty name." "Thank you. My mother chose it. She said it meant peace." They rode on, and Olivia found herself relaxing into the rhythm of the horse's gait and the warmth of the sun on her face. Everett's presence behind her no longer felt intrusive but comfortable, as though they had been riding together for years instead of hours. Around midday, they stopped to water the horse and eat a quick meal. Everett pointed out various landmarks, teaching her the lay of the land. That distinctive rock formation meant they were still on the right path. This particular bend in the creek was a good place to fish. Those tracks in the mud were from deer, but those others were from a black bear, probably a day old. "How do you know all of this?" Olivia asked, fascinated despite herself. "Same way you know how to sew, I imagine. Someone taught me and I practiced until it became second nature." He handed her a canteen. "My father was not much for book learning, but he could read the land like some men read newspapers. He taught me to pay attention, to notice the small things that tell you what is really going on around you." "What do you notice about me?" The question slipped out before she could stop it, bold and far too personal. Everett looked at her for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. "I notice that you are stronger than you think you are." Most women in your situation would have fallen apart completely. But here you are, barely 12 hours later, handling yourself with dignity. "I notice that you have kind eyes but a guarded mouth, like you are used to holding your tongue when you want to speak your mind. I notice that you are trying very hard not to be afraid, even though you probably should be at least a little wary of riding off with a stranger." Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "That is quite observant. I pay attention." His voice was gentle. "And for the record, it is all right to be afraid. Fear keeps us cautious. Just know that you do not need to be afraid of me. I know." And the strange thing was, she did know. Some instinct deeper than reason told her that Everett Garrett was a man of his word. They reached the ranch as the sun was setting on the second day, painting the sky in brilliant shades of crimson and gold. The property was situated in a wide valley between two ridges, with a creek running through the eastern edge and pastureland stretching out in all directions. The house itself was modest, a single-story structure built from rough-hewn logs with a stone chimney rising from one end. There was a barn, a smaller bunkhouse for the hands, a chicken coop, and several corrals. As they rode up, two men emerged from the barn. Both were in their 30s, with the weathered look of men who worked outdoors for a living. One was tall and broad-shouldered with auburn hair, the other shorter and wiry with dark hair and a full beard. "Boss," the taller one called out, "was starting to worry about you. You were gone longer than expected." "Had a detour," Everett said as he dismounted and then helped Olivia down. Her legs were stiff from the long ride and she stumbled slightly. His hand steadied her, warm through the fabric of her dress. "Jack Samuel, this is Miss Olivia Ashford. She is going to be helping out around the place with the cooking and housekeeping." The two men stared at her with undisguised surprise. "A woman," Jack, the taller one, said. "Where did you find a woman in Benton willing to come out here?" "It is a long story," Olivia said before Everett could answer. "But I assure you, I am here to work, and I would appreciate being treated with respect." Samuel, the bearded one, grinned. "Yes, madam, Any woman who can make better food than what Jack serves up has my undying respect and devotion." "My cooking is not that bad," Jack protested. "You burned water last week," Samuel shot back. "That was an accident." Everett laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "All right, you two. Help me get Miss Ashford's trunk into the house, and then we can all have a proper introduction over dinner. Assuming," he turned to Olivia, "you are not too tired from the journey to cook. I can manage something simple," she said. The truth was she was exhausted, but she wanted to prove her worth. "If you show me what you have available." The house was sparse but clean. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a large stone fireplace, a rough-hewn table with benches, and a few chairs. There was a small bedroom off to one side, which Everett gestured to. "This was going to be a guest room, but I never got around to finishing it. It has a bed and a dresser, and I will get you some curtains for the window. The other bedroom is mine, on the opposite side of the house." He seemed anxious for her to understand the propriety of the arrangement. "There is an outhouse about 50 yards behind the house, and we have a well with good water." Olivia looked around, taking it all in. It was nothing like what she had imagined her life would be. Thomas's house in Benton had been much nicer, with real wallpaper and glass windows and a water pump right in the kitchen. But this place had something Thomas's house had not. It felt like a home. There was a warmth here, a sense that people actually lived and worked and built a life within these walls. "It is perfect," she said, and meant it. Everett's smile was like sunrise. "I am glad you think so. Now let me show you the kitchen supplies, and then I will get out of your way." The kitchen was better stocked than she had expected. There were sacks of flour and cornmeal, dried beans, salt pork, coffee, sugar, and even some spices. A good cast iron skillet hung on the wall along with various pots and pans. It was clear that someone had made an effort to equip the kitchen properly, even if the cooking skills had not matched the equipment. "I have chickens," Everett said, "so there are usually fresh eggs, and we have a smokehouse with some bacon and ham. There is a root cellar out back with potatoes, onions, and some preserved vegetables from last fall. This is more than enough to work with." Olivia rolled up her sleeves, already planning the meal in her mind. "I can make a decent stew and some cornbread. Will that suit?" "That sounds like a feast." She shooed him out and got to work. It felt good to have a task, something concrete to focus on besides the turmoil of the past 2 days. She found the root cellar exactly where Everett had said, stocked with wrinkled but still good potatoes and onions. Back in the kitchen, she diced the salt pork and got it frying in the big cast iron pot, then added the vegetables and some water to simmer. While that cooked, she mixed up cornbread, relishing the familiar motions of measuring and stirring. The men stayed outside, probably sensing that she needed space. Through the window, she could see them tending to the horses and doing various evening chores. Everett moved with an easy competence that was pleasant to watch. He clearly loved this life he had built. By the time the sun had fully set, the stew was bubbling merrily and the cornbread was golden brown. Olivia set the table, such as it was, and called the men in to eat. They descended on the food like locusts, filling their bowls and plates with an enthusiasm that was flattering. The first bites brought groans of appreciation. "Miss Ashford," Samuel said around a mouthful of cornbread, "I think I love you." "You say that to every woman who feeds you," Jack said, but he was nodding in agreement as he spooned up stew. "But seriously, madam, this is wonderful, thank you." "You are welcome." Olivia felt a small glow of satisfaction. It was such a simple thing, feeding people, but their genuine appreciation made her feel useful in a way she had not in months. Everett ate more quietly, but she noticed he had seconds of everything and cleaned his bowl completely. When he caught her eye, he smiled. "You are not exaggerating about your cooking skills. This is excellent." They talked as they ate, the conversation easy and ranging across various topics. Jack and Samuel had been working for Everett for 2 years, having come west from Missouri after their parents died. They were good-natured and clearly devoted to their boss, who they spoke of with genuine respect and affection. "Everett does not talk much about himself," Jack said, "but he is the best boss we have ever had. Fair pay, treats us like people instead of hired help. When Samuel broke his arm last year falling off a horse, Everett paid for the doctor and gave him light duty until it healed." "Anyone would have done that," Everett said, clearly uncomfortable with the praise. "No," Samuel said flatly. "They would not have. Most ranchers would have just replaced me." After dinner, the hands headed back to the bunkhouse and Olivia began cleaning up. Everett tried to help, but she waved him off. "You have had a long 2 days to go rest. I do not feel right leaving you with all the work. I am used to it. Besides, this is my job now, remember." He lingered in the doorway. "Olivia." "Yes, thank you for coming here. I know it was not an easy decision, and I know today must have been difficult, but I am glad you are here." Something warm unfurled in her chest. "I am glad, too." He nodded and disappeared into his bedroom, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the warm glow of the fire. As she washed the dishes in a basin of heated water, Olivia reflected on the strangeness of life. 2 days ago, she had been preparing to marry a man she barely knew and did not love. Now she was washing dishes in a remote ranch house for a different man she barely knew. The difference was that this time she had chosen it. This time she was not just accepting her fate but actively shaping it. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The days fell into a rhythm. Olivia woke before dawn and started the fire, put coffee on to boil, and began preparing breakfast. The men would come in hungry from morning chores, eat quickly, and head back out to work with the cattle or mend fences or whatever task needed doing that day. She would spend the morning cleaning, doing laundry, tending the vegetable garden she had discovered behind the house, and preparing the midday meal. Afternoons were for baking bread, mending clothes, and preparing dinner. Evenings were for sitting by the fire with coffee or tea, and sometimes conversation with Everett, though he was usually so exhausted from the physical labor that he fell asleep in his chair. It was hard work, but it was honest work, and Olivia found herself falling asleep each night with a sense of accomplishment she had never felt when she was sewing for hours in a cramped room in Benton. Here, her efforts had immediate, visible results. The house became cleaner and more comfortable. The food improved dramatically, and the men's appreciation never waned. She felt needed in a way that was deeply satisfying. More surprising was how much she enjoyed Everett's company. He was nothing like Thomas, who had been smooth and charming in a calculated way. Everett was quieter, more thoughtful, but when he spoke it was with genuine feeling. He asked her opinion on things, from how to arrange the furniture to what vegetables to plant in the garden next season. He treated her as an equal, not as a servant or a decoration. On Sunday afternoons, when the work was lighter, he began teaching her to ride properly. She had learned the basics as a child, but that had been side saddle on a placid mare. Everett taught her to ride astride, on a gentle chestnut mare named Rosie who had belonged to the previous owner of the ranch. "You need to be able to handle a horse if you are living out here," he explained as he adjusted the stirrups. "What if there is an emergency and you need to ride for help?" It was practical advice, but Olivia suspected he also enjoyed teaching her. He was patient and encouraging, never making her feel foolish when she made mistakes. Under his tutelage, she grew confident in the saddle, learning to read Rosie's moods and communicate with gentle pressure of leg and rein. One particularly beautiful Sunday in late September, they rode out to check on a section of fence in the north pasture. The heat of August had broken, and the air was crisp with the promise of autumn. The leaves were just beginning to turn, splashes of gold and crimson against the green. "It is beautiful here," Olivia said as they paused on a ridge overlooking the valley. "I never appreciated this when I lived in town. The land, I mean, the way it changes with the seasons. It is one of the things I love most about this life," Everett said. He was sitting easy in his saddle, one hand resting on his thigh. "Every day is different. You notice things. The way the light changes, the first frost, the spring flowers, it keeps you connected to something bigger than yourself. You are quite philosophical for a rancher," she teased gently. He grinned. "I contain multitudes." They rode on, companionably silent. Olivia was acutely aware of him beside her, the way he moved with his horse as though they were one creature. She found herself noticing small things. The way his hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck, the laugh lines around his eyes, the strength in his hands as he handled the reins. It was not appropriate to notice these things, she told herself firmly. He was her employer. This was a business arrangement, but her heart did not seem to care about propriety. They found the fence section that needed repair, and Everett dismounted to examine it. "Looks like a bear rubbed against it, probably scratching an itch. I will have Jack and Samuel come out tomorrow to fix it." He pulled a small notebook from his pocket and made a note, then looked up at her. "Want to see something special? What is it? Follow me." He led her along a narrow trail that wound up through the pines. After about 20 minutes, they emerged at the top of a hill where a single oak tree stood, ancient and gnarled. From this vantage point, they could see for miles in every direction. The ranch buildings tiny in the distance, the creek glinting silver in the sun, the ridges rolling away in shades of blue and purple. "I come here sometimes when I need to think," Everett said. He dismounted and helped her down, and they stood together under the oak. "This tree has been here longer than any of us. Sometimes that is comforting, you know. It puts things in perspective." "It is magnificent," Olivia breathed. The wind rustled through the leaves with a sound like whispered secrets. "I am glad I could share it with you." His voice was soft, and when she looked at him, she found him watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. There was warmth there and something deeper, something that made her heart beat faster. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Olivia was suddenly, intensely aware of how close they were standing, how easy it would be to close the distance, how much she wanted to. But before either of them could move or speak, a distant shout echoed up from the valley. Everett's head snapped around. "That is Samuel. Something is wrong." They mounted quickly and rode back down the hill at a pace that had Olivia clinging to Rosie's mane. As they approached the ranch, they could see smoke rising from behind the barn. Not the lazy smoke of a campfire, but thick black clouds that spelled disaster. "The hay barn," Everett shouted. He urged Boone into a gallop, and Olivia followed, her heart in her throat. By the time they reached the yard, Jack and Samuel were already fighting the fire with buckets of water from the well, but it was clear they were losing the battle. The hay barn, a separate structure from the main barn where the animals were kept, was fully engulfed. Everett vaulted from his horse and joined them, organizing a bucket brigade. Olivia jumped down and ran to help, grabbing a bucket and throwing herself into the work. The heat was intense, and the smoke made her eyes water and her lungs burn, but she kept going, filling and passing buckets until her arms felt like they would fall off. The main concern was keeping the fire from spreading to the other buildings. If it reached the horse barn or the house, they would lose everything. They worked frantically, dousing the sides of the nearby structures with water, beating back sparks with wet sacks. It felt like hours, but was probably only 40 minutes before the fire finally died down to smoking ruins. The hay barn was a total loss, just a heap of charred timber and ash, but they had saved everything else. Everett stood staring at the wreckage, his face black with soot and drawn with exhaustion. "That was half our winter feed for the cattle," he said quietly. "We will have to buy more, and at this time of year the prices will be high." "What happened?" Olivia asked. Her voice was hoarse from smoke. "Do not know," Samuel said. He was bent over, hands on knees, breathing hard. "Jack and I were working in the main barn when we smelled smoke. By the time we got here, it was already roaring. Could have been spontaneous combustion," Jack offered. "If the hay was not properly dried, it can heat up and catch fire on its own." "Maybe." Everett did not sound convinced. "We were careful with that hay, made sure it was cured before we baled it." He shook his head. "Does not matter now, it is gone. We will have to deal with it." They were all exhausted and filthy, covered in soot and sweat. Olivia heated water for washing and put together a late dinner, while the men secured the animals and made sure there were no remaining hot spots that could reignite. The mood at dinner was somber. The loss of the hay was a significant financial blow, one that could make the difference between a profitable year and one where they just barely scraped by. Everett was quiet, clearly doing calculations in his head. "We will make it work," Jack said with forced cheerfulness. "We always do." "I know." Everett managed a smile. "I am just trying to figure out how." After the hands had gone to bed, Olivia found Everett standing outside, staring at the remains of the barn. She brought him a cup of coffee and stood beside him. "It will be all right," she said quietly. "Will it?" "I was counting on that hay. Now I will have to buy feed, and that money was supposed to go toward expanding the herd. It sets me back a year at least." "But you have not lost the animals or the house or the main barn. You still have your land and your livelihood. You will rebuild." He looked at her, and in the moonlight she could see the worry etched on his face. "You are very optimistic for someone who just lost her wedding and her old life." "Maybe that is why I am optimistic. I have already lost the worst things I could lose, and I am still standing. So are you." He was quiet for a long moment, then reached out and took her hand. The gesture was so simple, so natural, that Olivia did not think to pull away. His hand was warm and rough with calluses, and holding it felt like the most right thing in the world. "I am glad you are here," he said softly. "I do not know how I would get through this without you. You would manage. You are stronger than you think." He laughed, a short, soft sound. "That is my line." They stood there together under the stars, hands linked, and Olivia felt something shift inside her. This was not gratitude or obligation or even just friendship. This was something deeper, something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She was falling in love with Everett Garrett. The realization should have sent her running. It had been less than 2 months since her disastrous wedding day. She barely knew this man. But somehow, in the daily rhythms of shared work and conversation, in the quiet moments and the chaotic ones, she had come to care for him deeply. "Everett," she said, and then stopped, not knowing how to continue. He turned to face her fully, still holding her hand. "Olivia, I need to tell you something." Her heart hammered. "What is it?" "I did not bring you here just because I needed a cook. I did need help around the place, that was true. But when I saw you sitting there in that wedding dress, looking so lost and broken, I felt something I have not felt in years. I wanted to protect you. I wanted to give you a place where you could heal and figure out what you wanted from life. And then as I got to know you, I started wanting more than that. I started wanting you to stay, not as an employee but as—" He took a breath. "I am making a mess of this. What I am trying to say is that I have feelings for you, deep feelings. And I know it is too soon and inappropriate, and you probably think I am taking advantage of the situation, but I could not keep quiet any longer. If you want to leave, I will understand. I will give you your wages and pay for your passage wherever you want to go, no hard feelings. But if there is even a chance you might feel the same way, I would really like to know." Olivia stared at him, her mind reeling. He had feelings for her. He wanted her to stay, not as a cook or a housekeeper, but as something more. The hope in his eyes was almost painful to see. "I do feel the same way," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I have been trying not to because it seemed foolish and reckless and far too fast, but I cannot help it. When I am with you, I feel safe and valued and like I matter. You listen to me. You see me, really see me, not just as a woman to be protected or managed, but as a person with thoughts and opinions. I have never had that before." The smile that broke across his face was like dawn. "Really, really. I am terrified because I do not trust my own judgment after what happened with Thomas, and I do not want to make another mistake. But this does not feel like a mistake. It feels like the most right thing I have ever done." He raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently, a gesture so sweet and old-fashioned that it brought tears to her eyes. "I will never make you regret this," he said. "I promise you that. I believe you." He pulled her into his arms then, and she went willingly, resting her head against his chest and listening to the steady thump of his heartbeat. They stood that way for a long time, finding comfort in each other's presence, neither needing to fill the silence with words. The next morning, they told Jack and Samuel about their changed relationship status over breakfast. The two men exchanged knowing glances. "About time," Samuel said. "We have been placing bets on when you two would figure it out. You were betting on us." Olivia asked, not sure whether to be amused or offended. "In a friendly way," Jack clarified. "Samuel said 2 months, I said 3. Looks like he wins." "You are both ridiculous," Everett said, but he was grinning. "Now eat your breakfast and get back to work. Those fences will not mend themselves." The autumn passed in a golden haze. Everett courted Olivia properly, despite the fact that they were living under the same roof. He brought her wildflowers picked on his rides around the property. He saved the best cuts of meat for her plate. He taught her to shoot, patiently correcting her stance until she could hit a target at 20 yards. They took long walks in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing, learning each other's stories and dreams. He told her about his childhood, about growing up on the move as his father chased work from ranch to ranch, about the accident that killed his father when a spooked horse kicked him in the head, and the slow grief that consumed his mother afterward, about working for other men and saving every penny until he had enough to buy this land and build something of his own. She told him about her parents, about the happy childhood that ended too abruptly with their deaths, about the struggle to survive alone in Benton, the endless work as a seamstress that barely kept her fed and housed, about accepting Thomas's proposal not out of love but out of desperation, and the strange relief she had felt when he ran, as though some part of her had known it was wrong all along. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if he had not run?" Everett asked one evening as they sat by the fire. "If you had married him and lived that life, sometimes," Olivia admitted, "but I think I would have been miserable. Not because Thomas was cruel, but because I would have been settling, living a half-life. I did not know it at the time, but I do now. I am glad he ran." Everett reached over and took her hand. "Selfish of me, maybe, but I am glad. So am I." In late October, Everett rode into town to buy the hay they needed to replace what had been lost in the fire. He took Jack with him, leaving Samuel to watch the ranch. Olivia spent the day baking, making bread and pies to send with them for the journey, and trying not to worry. The trip was not dangerous, but she hated the thought of him being gone even for a few days. He returned 3 days later, the wagon loaded with hay bales, but his expression was troubled. After they had unloaded and secured the hay in the main barn, he asked to speak with Olivia privately. They walked out to the oak tree on the hill, their special place. The leaves were mostly gone now, the branches stark against the gray November sky. "What is wrong?" Olivia asked. "Did something happen in town?" "I saw Thomas Whitfield." Her stomach dropped. "Oh." "He approached me at the general store, asked if I was the man you had left town with. When I said yes, he got angry. Said I had taken advantage of you, that you were his intended bride and I had stolen you." "That is ridiculous. He is the one who ran." "I know. I told him as much. But he seems to have rewritten history in his mind. He is telling people that you ran away with me before the wedding, that he was the jilted party." Everett looked at her with worry in his eyes. "Olivia, he threatened to come here, said he was going to bring the law and get you back." "He cannot do that. I am not his property." "I know, but he can certainly cause trouble, and if he has convinced people in town that I kidnapped you or coerced you somehow, we could have a real problem." Olivia felt anger rising in her chest. After everything, Thomas was still trying to control her life. "What do you want to do?" Everett was quiet for a moment. "I want to marry you." She stared at him. "What?" "I know it is not the most romantic proposal, and it is partly practical. If you are my wife, Thomas has no claim on you whatsoever, but it is not just about that." He took both her hands in his. "Olivia, I was going to ask you anyway, maybe at Christmas or when spring came, but I love you. I love your strength and your kindness and your terrible sense of humor. I love the way you hum while you cook and the way you scrunch up your nose when you are concentrating. I want to spend my life with you, building this ranch, raising a family. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep next to you every night. So yes, part of this is about protecting you from Thomas, but most of it is just that I cannot imagine my future without you in it. Will you marry me?" Tears were streaming down Olivia's face. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." He pulled her into his arms and kissed her, and it was nothing like the chaste, perfunctory kiss Thomas had given her during their courtship. This was fire and sweetness and promise all at once. This was coming home. They were married a week later by a circuit preacher who came through the area once a month. Jack and Samuel stood as witnesses, and Olivia wore a simple blue dress she had made herself. There was no elaborate ceremony, no crowd of guests, no fancy reception. Just the five of them standing in the ranch house parlor, speaking vows that meant everything. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Everett kissed her with such tenderness that Olivia felt her heart might burst. This was what marriage should be, she thought. A choice made freely, with full hearts and clear eyes. That night, in the privacy of their shared bedroom, Everett was gentle and patient, making sure she felt safe and cherished. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the darkness, Olivia realized that for the first time in years she felt completely at peace. "I love you," she whispered against his chest. "I love you too." His arms tightened around her. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Olivia Garrett." Olivia Garrett. She had a new name now, a new life, a new future, and it was everything she had never dared to hope for. Winter came to the Ozark foothills with a vengeance. Snow fell heavy and deep, blanketing the valley in white silence. The work became harder as they struggled to keep the cattle fed and the water troughs from freezing solid. But inside the ranch house, there was warmth and light and laughter. Olivia had never been happier. Marriage to Everett was a revelation. He was an attentive husband, always considerate of her needs and feelings. They worked together as partners, making decisions jointly about the ranch and their lives. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire reading or talking or simply enjoying each other's company. The intimacy between them deepened, built on trust and genuine affection. Thomas Whitfield never came. They heard through the occasional visitor that he had left Benton shortly after their visit, heading west to try his luck in the gold fields of California. Olivia felt nothing but relief. That chapter of her life was closed. Christmas came, and Olivia threw herself into making it special. She baked cookies and bread and a ham from their smokehouse. She made small gifts for everyone. New shirts for Jack and Samuel, a new warm scarf for Everett knitted from wool she had carefully prepared. Everett surprised her with a beautiful cameo brooch that had belonged to his mother, presenting it to her on Christmas morning with shining eyes. "She would have loved you," he said as he pinned it to her dress. "She always said I needed to find someone who could match my stubbornness with her own." "Are you saying I am stubborn?" Olivia asked with mock offense, gloriously so. They kissed under the pine branches Olivia had hung over the doorway, and Jack made exaggerated gagging sounds until Samuel threw a pillow at him. The new year arrived with bitter cold and more snow. One particularly brutal January night, they woke to the sound of cattle bawling in distress. Everett was out of bed in an instant, pulling on clothes and boots. "The herd," he said tersely. "Something is wrong." Olivia dressed quickly and followed him out into the night. The scene that greeted them was chaos. A section of fence had come down, probably under the weight of snow and ice, and the cattle were milling in confusion, some wandering off into the darkness. Worse, she could see dark shapes moving at the edge of the lantern light. Wolves. Jack and Samuel came running from the bunkhouse, rifles in hand. The next hours were a blur of action. The men fired shots to scare off the wolves while Olivia helped herd the frightened cattle back toward the barn. The cold was brutal, seeping through her layers of clothing and making her fingers numb despite her gloves. They worked until dawn, finally getting the last of the cattle secured and the fence temporarily patched. 3 calves had been lost to the wolves, and several more animals had injuries that would need tending. Back in the house, Olivia made coffee and breakfast while the men discussed plans for a stronger fence and better protection for the herd. She was exhausted and her hands were blistered from handling the rough rope, but there was also a fierce satisfaction in what they had accomplished together. "You did well out there," Everett said quietly as she set a plate in front of him. "Thank you. We are partners," she replied simply. "Your problems are my problems now." He caught her hand and kissed her palm. "I am the luckiest man alive." February brought a brief warm spell, and with it, the first signs that spring would eventually come. The snow began to melt, and crocuses pushed up through the mud in sheltered spots. Olivia discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks but had not said anything, wanting to be sure. When she finally told Everett one evening after dinner, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. His face lit up with joy so pure it took her breath away. A baby. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing. "We are going to have a baby. Careful," she squealed, half laughing, half terrified. "Put me down." He set her down gently, then cupped her face in his hands. "This is the best news, the absolute best news. Are you happy?" Terrified, but yes, very happy. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "You are going to be an amazing mother, and I promise I will take care of you both, whatever you need." True to his word, Everett became even more protective. He would not let her lift anything heavy or work too hard. He worried constantly about her health, which Olivia found both touching and occasionally exasperating. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she told him one day when he tried to stop her from hanging laundry. Women have been doing this for thousands of years. Not my wife carrying my child, he countered. And I will worry if I want to. She could not argue with that logic. Spring arrived in full force, bringing renewal and life. The cattle had survived the winter in good shape despite the losses, and the first calves of the season were being born. The ranch was thriving, and with it, Olivia's sense of belonging deepened. This was her home now, these people her family. In May, they had unexpected visitors. A well-dressed couple arrived in a fine carriage, clearly city folk unused to the rough conditions of the backcountry. The woman was in her 50s, with graying hair and a kind face. The man was perhaps 10 years older, distinguished-looking with a neatly trimmed beard. "We are looking for Miss Olivia Ashford," the woman said when Everett answered their knock. "We were told she might be here." Olivia came to the door, her hand instinctively going to her swelling belly. "I am Olivia, though it is Olivia Garrett now. Can I help you?" The woman's face broke into a tremulous smile. "You would not remember me, dear. I am Clara Morris, your mother's cousin. This is my husband, Robert. We have been searching for you for months." Olivia felt dizzy. "My mother's cousin, but I thought we had no family left. Your mother and I lost touch when she married and moved to Arkansas. I did not even know she had passed until recently." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I am so sorry we were not there for you. When we heard about the wedding that did not happen and that you had disappeared, we were frantic. We hired investigators to find you. They invited the couple in, and over coffee, the story came out. Clara and Robert lived in St. Louis, where Robert was a successful merchant. They had no children of their own and had been devastated to learn of their cousin's death and Olivia's subsequent struggles. "We want to help," Clara said earnestly. "We want you to be part of our lives. We cannot replace your parents, but we can offer you family again." Olivia was overwhelmed. To suddenly have family after believing she was alone in the world was almost too much to process. Everett sat beside her, his hand warm and steady on her back, anchoring her. "That is very generous," Olivia said carefully, "but I have a life here now, a husband and a baby on the way. This is my home." "Of course," Clara said quickly. "We would not ask you to leave. We just want to be part of your life if you will let us. To know our cousin's daughter, to meet our new nephew or niece when they arrive." They stayed for 3 days, and by the time they left, Olivia felt like she had truly gained family. Clara and Robert were warm and genuine, clearly delighted to have found her. They promised to visit again and invited Olivia and Everett to come to St. Louis whenever they wanted. "You could bring the baby when they are old enough to travel," Clara suggested. "Show them the city. Let them meet their great-aunt and uncle properly." After they left, Olivia leaned against Everett on the porch, watching the dust settle from their carriage. "I cannot believe I have family again." "You have always had family," Everett corrected gently. "Jack and Samuel, me, but I am glad you have more now. Everyone deserves people who care about them." "I am so lucky," she said softly. 6 months ago I had nothing. Now I have everything." The summer passed peacefully. The ranch prospered, the cattle fattened on the rich grass, and Olivia's belly grew round with new life. She spent her days preparing for the baby, sewing tiny clothes and blankets, readying the small room that would become the nursery. Everett built a beautiful wooden cradle with his own hands, working on it every evening until it was perfect. In late September, as the leaves began to turn again and the air took on that familiar autumn crispness, Olivia's labor began. It was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Everett stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her face with cool cloths, murmuring encouragement. When their son finally arrived with a lusty cry, Everett wept openly. "He is perfect. he said in awe as Olivia cradled the tiny, red-faced bundle. "You are perfect. I cannot believe we made this." They named him James Robert Garrett after both their fathers. He had his mother's blonde hair and his father's amber eyes, and from the moment he drew breath, he ruled the household with tiny, imperious demands. Jack and Samuel were besotted, taking turns holding the baby and arguing over who he looked like more. Clara and Robert came as soon as they received word, bearing gifts and tears of joy. The little ranch house was full to bursting with love and laughter. As Olivia sat in the rocking chair Everett had surprised her with, nursing her son while her husband slept fitfully in the chair beside her, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. The pain of being jilted, the fear and uncertainty, the leap of faith in accepting Everett's offer. It had all led to this moment, this perfect, precious life. "I would do it all again," she whispered to the sleeping baby. "Every hard moment, every fear, every doubt, because it brought me to you and your father." James made a small snuffling sound and nestled closer, and Olivia's heart swelled with so much love she thought it might burst. The years rolled by like the changing seasons, each one bringing new joys and challenges. James was joined by a sister, Ellen, 2 years later, and then another son, William, after that. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. With careful management and a bit of luck, Everett was able to expand his herd and his land. They added on to the house, building more bedrooms and a proper dining room. Jack eventually married a girl from the nearby settlement and built a small house on the edge of the property. Samuel followed suit a year later. Both couples stayed on, their children growing up alongside the Garrett children, a small community bound by work and affection. Thomas Whitfield's name became a distant memory, a footnote in the story of Olivia's life. She heard once, years later, that he had struck it rich in California and married the daughter of another prospector. She wished him well and thought no more about it. Clara and Robert became regular visitors, traveling from St. Louis several times a year to see their growing family. They had indeed become like the aunt and uncle Olivia had never known, showering the children with affection and gifts, and providing a connection to the wider world beyond the ranch. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Everett took Olivia back to the oak tree on the hill. The children were with Jack and his wife for the evening, giving them a rare moment alone. They sat under the gnarled branches, watching the sun set over the valley, painting everything in gold. "You remember the first time I brought you here?" Everett asked, his arm around her shoulders. "Of course. You told me you came here to think. I have been thinking a lot lately, about how lucky I am, about how my whole life changed because I happened to ride through Benton on the exact day you needed someone." He turned to face her, taking her hands. "I do not believe in much, but I believe we were meant to find each other, that everything that happened, all the pain and struggle, was leading us both to that moment." "I believe that too," Olivia said softly. "You gave me a life when I had none. You gave me love when I thought I did not deserve it. You gave me everything. You gave me just as much. More, maybe. You made this house a home. You gave me children and laughter and purpose beyond just surviving. You made me believe I could be worthy of something good." They kissed as the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, and Olivia felt the same rush of love and gratitude she had felt on their wedding day, only deeper now, tempered and strengthened by years of partnership. As they rode back down the hill in the gathering darkness, Olivia reflected on the strange and wonderful path her life had taken. She had been so afraid that day in her wedding dress, so certain that her life was over. She could never have imagined the happiness that awaited her. The ranch lights came into view, warm and welcoming. She could see the children's silhouettes in the windows, probably impatiently waiting for their parents to return. Jack's house showed a lantern burning, and somewhere in the distance a cow lowed softly. This was home. This was love. This was the life she had built with Everett, one day at a time, one choice at a time. And it was more than she had ever dared to dream. The children grew, as children do, each developing their own personality and dreams. James was serious and steady like his father, already talking about taking over the ranch one day. Ellen was spirited and adventurous, constantly getting into scrapes and asking questions about everything. William was the baby, sweet and gentle, who loved animals and could calm even the most fractious horse with a touch. Olivia watched them with a mother's pride and occasional terror, marveling at how quickly time passed. It seemed like yesterday she was holding James for the first time, and now he was 8 years old and helping his father with the cattle. The ranch had become one of the most successful in the region. Everett's reputation for honest dealing and quality stock spread, and buyers came from as far as Kansas City and Dallas to purchase his cattle. He had also begun raising horses, breeding for temperament and endurance, and those too were gaining a reputation. But success had not changed him. He was still the same man who had offered a hand to a desperate woman in a wedding dress, still kind and thoughtful and deeply devoted to his family. He still brought Olivia wildflowers in the summer and made sure she had time to herself when the children became overwhelming. He was still her best friend and her partner in all things. One spring evening, when the children were finally in bed after much protest and several false alarms, Olivia and Everett sat on the porch watching the stars. It had become their habit, this quiet time together after the chaos of the day. "Do you ever think about that day?" Olivia asked. "The day we met, all the time," Everett admitted. "I think about how close I came to just riding on by. I had finished my business at the land office and I was ready to head home. But something made me take the long way through town, past that church." He shook his head in wonder. "If I had left 5 minutes earlier or taken a different route, we never would have met. Our whole lives would be different. I would probably still be in Benton, working as a seamstress and alone," Olivia said. "Or maybe I would have found another man to marry for practical reasons. Either way, I would not have been happy. I would still be here, probably, but coming home to an empty house every night. Going through the motions but not really living." He reached over and took her hand. "You saved me just as much as I saved you, you know. You gave me something to live for beyond just the ranch." "We saved each other," Olivia corrected. "That is what love does. It makes us better than we were alone." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds. The chirp of crickets, the distant hoot of an owl, the soft rustle of wind through the new leaves. "I want to tell the children the story," Olivia said suddenly, "when they are older. About how we met, about taking a chance on each other. I want them to know that sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead to the best things." "That is a good lesson," Everett agreed, "and a good story. Though maybe leave out the part where their mother contemplated throwing herself into the creek in her wedding dress." "I never said I was going to do that. You had the look of someone considering it." She laughed and swatted his arm. "I did not. I was just very, very sad." "Well, I am glad you did not. Would have ruined a perfectly good dress, and also I would never have gotten to marry you." As the years continued to pass, the ranch became more than just a home. It became a legacy. James, as he grew into a young man, showed a natural talent for ranching and a good head for business. Ellen, despite her parents' initial concerns, proved to have a gift with horses that rivaled her father's. William discovered a love for the land itself, studying the soil and plants with an intensity that suggested he might become a farmer rather than a rancher. Everett and Olivia supported each of them, encouraging their individual strengths rather than forcing them into predetermined roles. It was a different approach than many of their neighbors took, but they believed in letting their children find their own paths. When James was 18, a young woman named Sarah came to the area with her family, and he was instantly smitten. Olivia watched the courtship with a mixture of amusement and nostalgia, remembering her own journey to love. Unlike her own experience with Thomas, James's relationship with Sarah was built on genuine affection and shared values. They married after a year's courtship, and Sarah proved to be a wonderful addition to the family, hardworking and kind with a quick sense of humor. Ellen, true to her independent nature, announced at 16 that she wanted to train horses professionally. She was good enough to do it, Everett admitted, though the idea of his daughter working in such a male-dominated field worried him. But Olivia reminded him of the leap of faith he had taken with her all those years ago, and he reluctantly agreed. Ellen flourished, gaining a reputation as one of the best horse trainers in Arkansas. She eventually married a veterinarian from Little Rock, and together they started a business that combined their talents. William, the gentle soul, fell in love with the daughter of a neighboring farmer and decided to split his time between ranching and farming, creating a hybrid operation that actually worked remarkably well. Through it all, Everett and Olivia remained the steady center of the family. They had their disagreements, of course. What couple did not? But they had learned to communicate, to listen to each other, to work through problems together. Their love had matured from the heady rush of those early days into something deeper and more resilient. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Children and grandchildren ran through the house that had seen so much love and life. Jack and Samuel, now gray-haired and moving a bit slower but still sharp and engaged, told stories about the early days that made the younger generation laugh. Clara and Robert, now quite elderly but still spry, had made the journey from St. Louis one more time. Clara pulled Olivia aside during the party, tears in her eyes. "Your mother would be so proud of you," she said, gripping Olivia's hands. "You have built such a beautiful life, such a wonderful family. When Robert and I found you all those years ago, I was so worried about you. But you did not need our help or our money. You had already found everything you needed." "I found love," Olivia said simply. "Everything else followed from that." As the sun set that evening, Everett called for everyone's attention. "I want to propose a toast," he said, raising his glass. 25 years ago, I met a woman in a wedding dress who looked like her world had ended. I asked her a simple question. "Got anywhere to go?" She said no. "And I told her, now you do." He looked at Olivia, and his eyes were bright with emotion. "That was the best thing I ever did. Bringing you here, giving you a chance, and eventually earning your love. You have made every day since then an adventure and a joy. You have given me more happiness than I ever thought possible. So here is to you, Olivia Garrett, the strongest, kindest, most stubborn woman I have ever known. I love you more today than I did 25 years ago, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today." There was not a dry eye in the room as everyone raised their glasses in toast. Olivia was crying too hard to speak, so she just walked over to her husband and kissed him while their family cheered and applauded. That night, after everyone had finally gone to bed and the house was quiet, Everett and Olivia took one last walk together under the stars. They ended up, as they so often did, at the oak tree on the hill. "You remember what you said to me here on our 10th anniversary?" Olivia asked as they stood under the ancient branches. "I said I believed we were meant to find each other. You still believe that, more than ever." He pulled her close. "Every good thing in my life traces back to that day in Benton. Our children, our grandchildren, this ranch we built together, the life we have lived. All of it started with one choice, to offer help to someone who needed it. And my choice to accept that help, even though it scared me to death. Bravest thing you ever did. No, Olivia said softly. The bravest thing I ever did was let myself love you. After everything with Thomas, after feeling so betrayed and foolish, it would have been easy to close my heart and keep it safe. But I did not. I let you in, and it was the best decision of my life. They stood there together, two people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built something lasting and true. The valley spread out below them, dark and peaceful, dotted with the lights of the various homes that made up their extended family. Somewhere a coyote called and another answered, their voices carrying on the wind. "What do you think happens next?" Everett asked. "We have lived a good life, built a legacy. What comes after?" "More of the same, I hope," Olivia said. "More mornings waking up next to you. More dinners with our family. More quiet evenings and Sunday rides. More love, always more love." "That sounds perfect." As they walked back down the hill hand in hand, Olivia felt a profound sense of gratitude and peace. She thought about the girl she had been, lost and hurt and scared in her wedding dress. She thought about all the choices and chances that had led her here. She thought about the life she had built with this good man, brick by brick, day by day, through hard work and devotion. The ranch house came into view, lights glowing warmly in the windows. It was not grand or fancy, but it was filled with love and laughter and memories. It was home. And as they stepped inside together, closing the door on the cool night air, Olivia realized that she had found something she had not even known she was looking for all those years ago. Not just security or safety, but true belonging. She had found her place in the world, and it was right here, with this man and this life they had created together. The story that had begun with heartbreak and ended in joy had taught her that sometimes the worst moments are simply prelude to the best ones. That courage is not the absence of fear, but moving forward despite it. That love, real love, is not about grand gestures or perfect circumstances, but about choosing each other every single day. And as she settled into bed beside Everett that night, his arm around her waist and his breath warm on her neck, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that if she could go back to that day in Benton and do it all again, she would not change a single thing. Because every moment, good and bad, had led her home. Years continued to unfold like pages in a well-loved book. Olivia and Everett grew older together, their hair turning gray, their steps becoming slower but no less purposeful. They passed the day-to-day running of the ranch to James and Sarah, though both remained active and involved. Everett still rode out to check the fences and inspect the herd, and Olivia still managed the household and tended her beloved garden. Their grandchildren multiplied, filling the ranch with noise and energy during visits. James and Sarah had 4 children. Ellen and her husband had 2. William and his wife had 3. The gatherings became even more chaotic and wonderful, with children of all ages running through the house and across the fields. Olivia loved being a grandmother. She told the children stories, taught the girls to sew and cook, helped the boys learn to read. She was patient in ways she sometimes had not been with her own children, having learned that time with the ones you love is the most precious gift. Clara passed away peacefully in her sleep when she was 82, with Robert following just 6 months later. They left their considerable estate to Olivia, with instructions to use it to secure the ranch's future and provide for the family. The money allowed James to make significant improvements to the operation and ensure that all the grandchildren would have opportunities for education if they wanted them. Jack Morrison died of a heart attack while mending a fence one hot July day. He was 73 and had worked right up until the end, insisting he was too stubborn to slow down. His funeral was attended by everyone in the county who knew him, a testament to the good man he had been. Samuel mourned his brother deeply and passed away himself 2 winters later, as though he could not bear to be without his lifelong companion. Olivia and Everett grieved for their old friends, the men who had been with them from the beginning. But they also celebrated the lives lived, the loyalty and friendship that had endured for decades. In their memory, they set up a small scholarship fund for young men who wanted to learn ranching but lacked the means. On Olivia's 70th birthday, the entire family gathered once again. There were now great-grandchildren toddling around, the newest generation of Garretts. Olivia sat in a comfortable chair on the porch, surveying the crowd with deep satisfaction. Everett, at 73, sat beside her, his hand clasped in hers. "Got anywhere to go?" he asked with a mischievous smile, echoing that question from so long ago. Olivia laughed, the sound still bright despite her years. "I am exactly where I need to be." "Good answer." Ellen's oldest daughter, named Olivia in honor of her grandmother, came over with her own infant daughter. "Grandma, will you tell us the story again? About how you and Grandpa met?" The children gathered around, even those who had heard the tale countless times before. There was something magical about the story, something that resonated with both young and old. So Olivia told it again, painting the picture with words. The wedding dress, the abandoned bride, the stranger who offered help when it was needed most. She told them about the leap of faith, the journey to an unknown ranch, the slow building of trust that became love. She told them about hard work and harder times, about joy and sorrow, about building a life together one day at a time. The children listened with rapt attention, and when she finished, young Olivia asked, "Were you scared, Grandma, when you rode off with a stranger?" "Terrified," Olivia admitted. "But sometimes the right choice is also the scary choice. Your grandfather gave me a chance when I had nothing. He saw past my circumstances to the person I could become, and I took a chance on him too. That is what love is, really. Taking a chance on someone and trusting them to take a chance on you." Everett squeezed her hand. "Best chance I ever took." As the evening wore on and the stars emerged one by one, the family dispersed to various activities. The children played games, the adults talked and laughed, and the babies were rocked to sleep by loving arms. Olivia and Everett remained on the porch, watching it all with contentment. "You think they understand?" Olivia asked. "What we built here? It is not just the ranch or the money or even the family, though that is all part of it. It is the love, the foundation we laid. Do you think they get that?" "I think they feel it even if they cannot articulate it," Everett said thoughtfully. "They know this is a place where they are loved and accepted. They know family matters here. They know hard work and integrity and kindness are valued. We have shown them by how we lived, not just by what we said. I hope so. I hope they carry it forward into their own lives. They will. Look at them, Olivia. Look at what we started. 3 strong children who are raising children of their own with the same values. A ranch that has provided for 3 generations and will provide for more. Friendships and partnerships built on trust. This is our legacy, not just land and cattle, but love and family and community." Olivia looked at him, this man who had saved her and been saved by her in turn. Time had carved lines deeper into his face and silvered his hair, but his eyes still held the same warmth and kindness that had drawn her to him all those years ago. "I love you," she said simply. "After all these years, through everything, I love you more than words can express. And I love you." From the moment I saw you sitting on that bench in your wedding dress to this very second, my love for you has only grown." They kissed, tender and sweet, while their family bustled around them and the stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance. The seasons turned, as they always do. Autumn gave way to winter, winter to spring, spring to summer, and the cycle repeated. Olivia and Everett moved into their 80s, their bodies slowing but their minds and hearts still sharp. They spent their days in quiet contentment, enjoying the simple pleasures: morning coffee on the porch, afternoon naps in the shade, evening walks when the weather permitted. Everett's health began to fail when he was 85. It started with small things: increased fatigue, occasional confusion, difficulty breathing after exertion. The doctor diagnosed a weak heart, the result of a lifetime of hard physical labor and simply living a long life. He prescribed rest and limited activity, but they all knew what that meant. Everett faced it with the same quiet courage he had faced everything else in his life. He made sure his affairs were in order, that James and Sarah understood everything they needed to know about running the ranch. He wrote letters to his children and grandchildren, expressing his love and pride in each of them. He made peace with his life and his approaching end. One warm May evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, Everett asked to be taken to the oak tree on the hill one last time. James and William carefully helped him onto a horse, and together the family made the journey. Olivia riding beside him, their children and grandchildren following. At the tree, they spread blankets and settled Everett comfortably against the ancient trunk. From here, they could see the entire ranch: the house, the barns, the pastures with their grazing cattle, the creek glinting in the fading light. It was a view of everything they had built together. "This is where I asked you to marry me," Everett said to Olivia, his voice thin but clear. "Do you remember?" "Every detail," she assured him, taking his hand. Tears streamed down her face, but she made no effort to hide them. "You said you could not imagine a future without me." "Still cannot," he said with a shadow of his old smile. "Wherever I am going next, I will be waiting for you. But not too soon, you hear me? You enjoy every moment of this life first. I will try." He looked around at his family, gathered close. "I am a fortunate man," he said. "I have lived a good life, loved and been loved in return. I have seen my children and my children's children thrive. I have worked land I was proud of and built something lasting. A man cannot ask for more than that." They stayed on the hill until the stars came out, talking quietly and remembering. Everett dozed off periodically, peaceful and pain-free for the moment. When the air grew cold, they carefully took him home and settled him in his bed. Olivia lay beside him that night, as she had for so many years, listening to his breathing and memorizing the feel of his presence. She knew this would likely be their last night together, and she wanted to remember everything. Just before dawn, with his family surrounding him and Olivia's hand in his, Everett Garrett took his last breath. It was peaceful, quiet, the natural end to a life well lived. He went with a smile on his face and love in his heart. The grief was profound but not bitter. They mourned him deeply, but they also celebrated him. The funeral was one of the largest the county had ever seen, with people coming from across Arkansas and beyond to pay their respects. Person after person shared stories of Everett's kindness, his integrity, his quiet generosity. He had touched many lives, often in ways Olivia had not known about. Loans extended without interest to struggling neighbors, advice given freely to young ranchers, help offered without being asked. "He was a good man," Jack's son told Olivia at the wake. "My father used to say that Everett Garrett was the kind of man who made you want to be better just by knowing him." That, Olivia thought, was a perfect epitaph, The weeks and months that followed were difficult. The house felt empty without Everett's presence. Olivia found herself turning to speak to him, only to remember he was gone. She missed the small routines they had shared: morning coffee, evening walks, the comfortable silence of two people who knew each other so completely they did not need words. But she was not alone. Her children rallied around her, making sure she was never without company unless she wanted it. The grandchildren visited constantly, filling the house with noise and life. And she found comfort in the familiar rhythms of ranch life, in the land that she and Everett had tended together. On her 85th birthday, the family once again gathered. It was bittersweet, celebrating without Everett, but Olivia was determined to honor his wish that she enjoy every moment of life. Ellen's daughter, Olivia the younger, now had 3 children of her own. She brought the youngest, a 2-year-old boy named Everett, in honor of his great-grandfather, to sit with his elderly namesake. "Tell him the story, Grandma," young Olivia said. "Tell him how you and great-grandpa Everett met." So Olivia did one more time. She told the story to this child who would never know the man he was named for, but who would grow up hearing about him. She told him about the jilted bride and the cowboy who offered her a new life. She told him about courage and love and the beautiful things that can grow from painful beginnings. Little Everett was too young to understand, but he sat quietly in her lap, seeming to sense the importance of the moment. "The best thing about your great-grandfather," Olivia said, as much to herself as to the child, "was that he saw people, really saw them, for who they were and who they could become. He did not judge me for my circumstances or my past. He gave me a chance, and then he loved me for exactly who I was. That is the greatest gift one person can give another." She looked around at her family, at the legacy she and Everett had created. "That is what I want all of you to remember and carry forward. See people. Love them. Give them chances when they need them. Build something good and lasting. That is how we honor his memory." There was not a dry eye in the room. Olivia lived for 3 more years, remaining sharp and engaged until the very end. She spent her time with her family, tended her garden, and often walked up to the oak tree on the hill to sit and remember. Sometimes she talked to Everett as if he were there, sharing the small news of daily life and the large milestones of their growing family. On a beautiful spring morning, she did not wake up. The grandchild who had stayed with her the night before found her peaceful in bed, a smile on her face. On the nightstand was a worn photograph of her and Everett on their wedding day, young and full of hope. They buried her beside Everett under the oak tree, the place that had been so special to them both. The entire county came to pay respects to the woman who had arrived as a jilted bride and left as the beloved matriarch of one of the most respected families in Arkansas. At the funeral, James stood to speak about his mother. "She taught us many things," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "How to work hard, how to love deeply, how to face hardship with courage. But the most important thing she taught us was that it is never too late to start over. That one bad day, one painful moment, does not define your life. What defines you is what you do next, the choices you make when faced with adversity." He looked at the gathered crowd. "My mother could have given up that day she was jilted. She could have let bitterness and shame destroy her. Instead, she took a chance on a stranger's kindness, and that single brave choice changed everything. She built a beautiful life from the ashes of her worst day. That is her legacy, not just this ranch or this family, but the lesson that hope and love can transform anything." The words echoed Olivia's own thoughts, the wisdom she had tried to impart to her family. And as the sun set over the valley, painting the sky in brilliant colors, it seemed fitting that she and Everett were together again, watching over the land and the family they had built. Years later, when the younger generations would visit the graves under the oak tree, they would tell their children the story. The story of the jilted bride and the cowboy who asked her a simple question, "Got anywhere to go?" And when she said no, he replied, "Now you do." It became a family legend, a founding myth that carried within it all the values the family held dear: compassion, courage, hard work, and above all, love. The ranch continued to thrive, passing through generations, each adding their own chapter to the story while honoring the foundation that Olivia and Everett had laid. The house was expanded and modernized, but a small section was preserved as it had been in their time. The kitchen where Olivia had cooked countless meals, the bedroom they had shared for so many years, the porch where they had watched sunsets together. It became a museum of sorts, a reminder of where it all began. And every year on the anniversary of their first meeting, the family would gather at the oak tree. They would share a meal, tell the old stories, and remember the two people whose love had created not just a family, but a legacy of kindness and courage that would echo through generations. The oak tree stood sentinel through it all, its branches stretching toward the sky, its roots deep in the Arkansas soil. It had witnessed their first kiss, their proposal, their quiet moments of joy and sorrow. And it stood now as a living monument to a love that had transformed two broken people into something whole and beautiful. In the end, that was the real story. Not just of a jilted bride and a kind cowboy, but of two people who found each other when they needed it most, who chose each other every day, who built something lasting out of kindness and courage and unwavering devotion. It was a love story for the ages, set against the wild beauty of the American West. And like the land itself, it endured, season after season, generation after generation, a testament to the power of taking a chance on love when it appears, even in the most unlikely circumstances. The story of Olivia and Everett Garrett would be told and retold for over a century, inspiring countless descendants to be brave, to be kind, and to believe that even in our darkest moments, hope can find us if we are brave enough to say yes when it appears. And somewhere in whatever lies beyond this life, two souls who had found each other against all odds sat together under an eternal oak tree, hand in hand, watching over the family and the land they loved, knowing that their story would never truly end as long as people believed in the transformative power of love and second chances. Their legacy was not measured in acres or cattle or even descendants, though there were plenty of all three. Their legacy was measured in the lesson they taught, that sometimes all it takes is one person asking if you have anywhere to go, and another person being brave enough to follow when the answer is no. Because in that moment, everything changes, and a new story, a better story, begins.